The smell hit me first, mold and old paper, thick enough to taste. I stood in the hallway of my building, staring at my mailbox like it had just insulted my mother. Empty. Third day in a row. I'm Alex Hartley, used to be a professor, climatology, if that means anything to you. Got fired for refusing to fake data for a developer who wanted to build condos on unstable wetlands. Cost me my career, my reputation, everything. Now I teach online courses from a shoebox apartment in this mixed-use building downtown. If you're watching Karenology, you know how these things start. With something small, something that doesn't make sense. The door to the shared mailroom had a new sign taped across it. Area temporarily closed for environmental inspection. Green Tomorrow Initiative. No contact info, no timeline. Just a scrawled signature I couldn't read, and a logo that looked like it came from a free template website. I tried the handle anyway. Locked. Through the frosted glass, I could see stacks of mail piled on the sorting table, mine included. I pressed my face closer. There, third stack from the left, a white envelope with a red stripe. My bank. Overdue notice, probably. The kind you can't ignore. Water dripped somewhere above me, a slow, rhythmic plop against metal. The building was old, sure, but not falling apart. Humidity sat around 35% most days. I'd checked it myself with the cheap gauge I kept by my window. You don't spend 15 years studying climate systems without developing habits. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the sign. Something felt wrong, not emergency wrong, calculated wrong. That's when the letter slid under my door. I heard the scrape first, then saw the corner of an envelope pushing through the gap. By the time I yanked the door open, the hallway was empty. Just the hum of the HVAC and that damn dripping. The letter was printed on thick cardstock, the kind that screams, official. Bold red text at the top, urgent, toxic mold remediation notice. I read it twice, then a third time, because my brain refused to process what it was saying. Stachybotrys chartarum, detected in mailroom ventilation system. Access prohibited until professional remediation complete. Estimated cost, $24,000. Resident contribution, $800 per unit. Payment due within 7 days. Stachybotrys, black mold, the stuff that makes headlines and lawsuit settlements. Except it doesn't grow in 35% humidity. It needs 50 minimum, plus poor ventilation and organic material to feed on. Our building was dry as bone. I'd lived here 18 months, never saw condensation on a single window. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. 2 clicks brought up my old modeling software, the one I used to predict environmental risks for construction sites. I plugged in our building's specs, square footage, HVAC capacity, seasonal weather data, average indoor temp, hit enter. The simulation ran for 30 seconds. Result, 0.003% probability of Stachybotrys growth under current conditions. Basically impossible. I grabbed the letter again and checked the signature. Lance Wood, Director, Green Tomorrow Initiative. Never heard of him, never heard of the company. Quick search turned up a website. Professional, polished, full of stock photos of people in hazmat suits. Registered 6 months ago in the Cayman Islands. No physical address, no client reviews, no history. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from anger. You ever been in that moment where you realize someone thinks you're stupid? That they looked at you and thought, yeah, this one will pay without asking questions. I stood up and walked back to the mailroom door, pressed my ear against it. Silence. No fans running, no dehumidifiers humming. If they'd found toxic mold, the place would be sealed tighter than a spaceship. Air scrubbers, negative pressure, biohazard tape. This door had a handwritten sign and a $20 padlock. I took another photo. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. A smudge on the glass right at eye level, fresh, like someone had pressed their face there recently, same as me. My phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject line. Dr. Hartley, your fall semester courses. 3 cancellations, students dropping out. 1 parent CC'd on the message. We don't feel comfortable with online instruction from someone involved in community disputes. Community disputes. I hadn't said a word to anyone yet. I opened Nextdoor, the neighborhood app I barely used. Top post, uploaded 2 hours ago. Professor at Riverside Building refuses to pay for toxic mold remediation. endangering residents, including children. 47 comments, most of them angry, some calling me selfish, one comparing me to people who don't vaccinate their kids. The post had a photo attached, me standing in front of the mailroom door this morning, phone in hand, taken from behind, slightly blurred but recognizable. Someone had been watching. Someone had been ready. I closed the laptop before I put my fist through it. My apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls too close. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Normal day. People walking dogs, carrying groceries, living their lives. None of them knew that 3 floors above, someone had just painted a target on my back. In my pocket, I still carried the old conference badge from the climate summit where I'd been fired. Laminated plastic, my name half rubbed off from 2 years in my wallet. I kept it as a reminder, a scar. Refusing to lie cost me everything once. Guess I was about to find out if I'd learned my lesson. I pulled up the email again and stared at Lance Wood's name. $24,000, split between 30 units. The math was clean. Too clean. What would you do? Pay up and hope it's real, or dig in and risk looking like the villain? I already knew my answer. I grabbed my keys and headed for the basement. If they'd really found mold, there'd be evidence. Moisture damage, discoloration, something. The building super, Vadim, kept his maintenance logs in a filing cabinet down there. Old school guy. Didn't trust computers. If anyone had reported water damage or ventilation problems, he'd have written it down. The basement smelled like concrete and WD-40. Single bulb overhead, flickering like it was thinking about quitting. Vadim's office was more of a closet. Metal desk, rusty chair, cabinet in the corner. I tried the cabinet. Locked. Of course. I stood there for a minute, listening to the building's guts rumble around me. Pipes, ducts, the bones of a structure that had been standing since the 70s. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Vadim appeared, carrying a toolbox that probably weighed more than I did. 60-something, Ukrainian accent thick enough to cut. Used to be an environmental engineer back in Kiev before he emigrated. "Professor," he said, not friendly, not unfriendly, just acknowledging. "Vadim, you see that sign on the mailroom?" He set the toolbox down with a metallic clang that echoed. "I see." "You call them? Green tomorrow?" "I call nobody. They show up yesterday. 2 men, suits, say they are inspectors." "Did they take air samples?" Vadim's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Sharp, focused. "They take pictures, many pictures, but no samples, no equipment." "You sure?" He walked to his desk and unlocked the bottom drawer, pulled out a USB drive. "Security footage. I make copy. You want?" I took it like he'd just handed me a winning lottery ticket. "Why?" He shrugged. "I see many scams. This smells like scam." "Why give it to me?" "Because you ask questions. Most people, they just pay." I pocketed the drive and headed back upstairs, my heart doing something between a sprint and a stumble. Back in my apartment, I plugged the drive into my laptop. 4 video files, each about 20 minutes long, time-stamped yesterday afternoon. I opened the first one. 2 men in cheap suits standing in the mailroom doorway. One holding what looked like a digital mold detector, black box, LED screen, the kind you buy on Amazon for $40. He held it near the wall, didn't turn it on, just held it there for 10 seconds, then wrote something on a clipboard. The second man took photos with his phone, wide shots of the room, close-ups of corners, never touched anything, never opened the ventilation grate. 15 minutes, in and out. I replayed it 3 times, same result. They didn't test anything. They staged a performance. My phone buzzed again, text from a number I didn't recognize. "Dr. Hartley, this is Clara Fenton, independent environmental consultant. I'll be conducting a follow-up inspection tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please ensure access to the mailroom." I Googled her name. Credentials looked solid. PhD from Cornell, 20 years in the field. Then I found her LinkedIn, under previous employment, 5 years at Wood Environmental Solutions. Wood, same last name as Lance. Funny how that works. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. The cracks up there looked like a map of something I couldn't quite read. Tomorrow at 2, they'd do another fake inspection, this time with a credible expert to back up the scam. Residents would see the PhD, hear the big numbers, and open their wallets. Unless I stopped it. But how do you fight a lie that looks like the truth? The clock hit 2 p.m. and I was standing in the lobby when Clara Fenton arrived. She looked exactly like her LinkedIn photo. Late 30s, sharp blazer, leather portfolio under one arm, confident. The kind of person who walks into a room and everyone assumes she knows what she's talking about. Behind her, Lance Wood, tan, white teeth, three-piece suit that probably cost more than my rent. He smiled like we were old friends. "Dr. Hartley," he said, extending his hand. "Lance Wood, I believe you received our notice." I didn't shake, just looked at his hand until he lowered it. "I did. Got some questions about your methodology." His smile didn't waver. "Of course. That's why Dr. Fenton is here. Full transparency. We want residents to feel confident in our assessment." Clara stepped forward. "Dr. Hartley, I understand your concerns. As a fellow scientist, I respect skepticism. That's why I've agreed to conduct an independent review." Independent? Sure, like a fox reviewing the henhouse security. About 20 residents had gathered in the lobby. Tina from 4B holding her toddler, Mr. Patel from across the hall, the Martinez family, all watching, all waiting to see if I was the hero or the villain. Lance gestured toward the mailroom. "Shall we?" Vadim appeared with the key, unlocked the door. The smell that rolled out was stale air and dust. Nothing organic, nothing alive. Clara pulled out a professional air sampling pump. The real deal this time, not the Amazon prop. She set it up on the sorting table, programmed it, hit start. "This will take about 20 minutes, she said. "We're testing for airborne spore concentration." I watched her work, precise, methodical. She knew what she was doing, which made this worse. She wasn't some amateur. She was a professional willing to lie. Lance turned to the crowd. "While we wait, I want to address some concerns. Yes, 24,000 sounds like a lot, but Stachybotrys remediation isn't optional. It's a health crisis. Left untreated, it can cause respiratory failure, neurological damage, even death." Tina shifted her kid to her other hip. The toddler was chewing on a toy truck, oblivious. "How soon can you start?" she asked. "As soon as we receive commitments from all residents," Lance said. "We've got a crew on standby. Could begin work Monday." I stepped forward. "Can I see the original test results?" Lance blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Your initial inspection, yesterday. You must have documentation. Chain of custody, lab analysis, something." Clara looked up from her equipment. "Dr. Hartley, that's standard procedure for remediation companies. I'm here to verify." "I'd like to see them anyway." Silence, the kind that stretches. Lance's smile finally cracked. "Just a little. Those documents are with our lab, proprietary analysis. We can request copies, but it'll take a few days." Proprietary. I let the word hang there. "For mold testing. It's standard practice." "No, it's not." Mr. Patel cleared his throat. "Alex, maybe we should just let them finish the test." I turned to him. We'd had coffee a few times, talked about cricket, his grandkids, normal neighbor stuff. Now he was looking at me like I was the problem. "Rashid, think about it. If there's really toxic mold, why isn't this place sealed? Where's the biohazard tape, the negative pressure system, the protective gear?" Clara stood. "Dr. Hartley, we're following EPA guidelines for preliminary assessment. Full containment comes during remediation." "Show me the EPA documentation then." Her jaw tightened. "I don't carry regulatory manuals to every site." "But you carry a $10,000 air pump." Lance stepped between us. "Folks, I think we're getting sidetracked. Dr. Hartley has questions. That's fine. But let's not delay the safety of 30 families because of one person's skepticism." The crowd murmured. "Not in my favor." Tina spoke up again. "I'm paying the $800. My daughter has asthma. I can't risk it." "Me too," someone else said, then another. I felt the room turning, not against the truth, against me. The air pump beeped. Clara checked the readout, then showed it to Lance. They exchanged a look I couldn't read. She turned to the crowd. "Preliminary results show spore concentration at 3,200 colony-forming units per cubic meter. EPA considers anything above 500 to be elevated. Above 2,000, critical." Gasps. Tina pulled her daughter closer. "That's definitive," Clara continued. "This mailroom is a biohazard. I'm recommending immediate closure and professional remediation." Lance nodded gravely. "We'll need signed agreements from all residents by Monday. Anyone who refuses will be held financially responsible if the mold spreads to other units. He looked directly at me when he said it. Have you ever felt a room turn against you? It's not loud. It's a frequency, a shift in how people breathe. Mr. Patel wouldn't meet my eyes. The Martinez family headed for the stairs. Tina whispered something to another mother, both of them glancing my way. I was the problem, the denier, the selfish professor who cared more about being right than about kids with asthma. By evening, my phone was blowing up. Texts, emails, next door notifications, most of them angry. Stop being selfish. Pay your share. You're putting everyone at risk. I lost 2 more courses, $3,600 gone. A student left a review on Rate My Professor. Doesn't care about community safety. Would not recommend. I sat at my kitchen table with Vadim's USB drive and a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving for no particular occasion. Poured 2 fingers, stared at my laptop screen. The security footage showed the truth, but truth without context is just noise. I needed proof they were lying, real proof, the kind that couldn't be explained away. I opened my climate modeling software again and pulled up humidity records for the building over the last 12 months. Every single day averaged between 32 and 38%, not one spike above 40. Stachybotrys can't grow in those conditions, physically impossible. But how do you make people believe physics over a PhD in a blazer? I pulled up Clara Fenton's work history, 5 years at Wood Environmental Solutions. Before that, 2 years at a firm that got shut down for insurance fraud in Connecticut. Before that, a gap. I kept digging, found a newspaper article from 7 years ago. Environmental consultant suspended for falsifying data in New Haven development case. Clara Fenton, same person, different outcome. She'd gotten her license reinstated 2 years later after additional training. I screenshot everything, started building a file. Then I found Lance Wood's LinkedIn, under current projects. 4 other buildings in the metro area, all mixed use, all with recent emergency remediation notices in the last 6 months. I pulled up property records, cross-referenced with business filings, found a shell company registered to an address that didn't exist. This wasn't a one-time scam, it was a business model. My hands were shaking again, not anger this time, something colder. I called the city health department, got a recorded message, office hours Monday through Friday, left a voicemail that probably sounded unhinged. Then I called my old colleague from the university, Martin. We'd published 3 papers together before I got canned. He was still on faculty, still had access to university resources. Alex, Jesus, it's been a year. I need a favor, lab analysis, air samples. What kind of samples? What's mold, possibly fabricated results. I need independent verification. Silence on the line, then, Alex, I can't get involved in whatever you're... Martin, they're running a scam. $24,000, 30 families. More silence. I heard him typing. Send me what you've got, he said finally. No promises. I hung up and realized I was crying, not sobbing, just water leaking out of my face like a broken seal. When was the last time someone had said yes? I wiped my eyes and went back to the files. That's when I found the bank covenant, buried in the building's mortgage documentation, available through public records. The building was insured under low environmental risk classification. If toxic mold was confirmed, the insurance premium would jump 340%. The developer who owned 40% of the units would lose $120,000 a year, which meant the developer had a vested interest in this being fake, or in it being real and blaming someone else. I leaned back. The ceiling cracks still looked like a map I couldn't read. But I was starting to see the territory. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Dr. Hartley, this is Mark Ashton, building developer. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Don't be late. Not a request, an order. I poured another finger of bourbon and watched the amber liquid catch the kitchen light. Funny thing about being backed into a corner, you stop caring about the rules. I opened a new browser tab and searched how to request insurance underwriter audit. The first result was a government website, Form 940C, Request for Policy Review. I started typing. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The kind of rain that sounds like static, like the world changing channels. By midnight, I'd filed the request. CC'd the city health department, and sent Martin everything I had. By 1 a.m., I drafted an email to every resident in the building, attached the security footage, explained the humidity data, kept it simple. Subject line: before you pay, watch this. My finger hovered over send. You ever stand at the edge of something and know that stepping forward means you can't go back? That once you hit that button, you're in it until the end? I hit send. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. I didn't sleep, just lay there listening to the rain and waiting for the consequences. They came faster than I expected. The consequences started at 6 a.m. with pounding on my door. I stumbled out of bed, still in yesterday's clothes, bourbon breath thick in my mouth. Through the peephole, I saw Mark Ashton, not alone, 2 men in security uniforms flanking him like bookends. I opened the door but kept the chain on. "Mr. Ashton, you're early. We need to talk now." He was younger than I'd expected, mid-40s, expensive haircut, nervous energy that made his hands twitch. The kind of developer who'd never actually built anything with his own hands. "Your office, you said, 9 a.m. "Plans changed." He held up his phone. "You sent some very interesting emails last night." I closed the door, slipped the chain, opened it again. The security guard stayed in the hallway but moved closer. "You want to explain to my residents why you're trying to sabotage a legitimate health inspection?" Ashton stepped inside without invitation. "Legitimate," I laughed. Sounded bitter even to me. "You mean the inspection by Dr. Fenton, the one who got suspended for falsifying data?" His face went blank for a split second, then the mask slid back on. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Connecticut, New Haven development. She faked environmental reports for a project that poisoned groundwater, cost the state $12 million in cleanup. I'd spent the night researching, found court documents, newspaper archives, everything. Martin had come through with preliminary analysis of the air sample data too. Numbers didn't add up. Stacky Bowtree spores don't appear in perfect round numbers. They cluster, vary, show patterns that matched nothing in nature. Ashton walked to my window, looked down at the street. "You know what I see down there, Professor? Families, people with kids, elderly folks on fixed incomes. You're scaring them. I'm telling them the truth. Your truth, your interpretation of data that you're not qualified to analyze." I felt my jaw clench. "I spent 15 years? You spent 15 years getting fired for refusing to follow protocol, for putting your ego ahead of community safety." The security guards shifted in the doorway. Ashton noticed me notice. "Look, Alex, can I call you Alex? I get it. You've been through a lot. Lost your position, your reputation. That's got to hurt. But this isn't the fight to pick." He pulled out an envelope, thick paper, my name handwritten on the front. "What's this?" "A consultation offer, $5,000 a month. We could use someone with your background reviewing environmental assessments for our other properties." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. "All you have to do is withdraw your complaints. Let Green Tomorrow finish their work. Maybe send a follow-up email to residents. Clarify that you were initially concerned, but now feel confident in the professional assessment. Have you ever been offered exactly what you need at exactly the moment you can't take it? $5,000 a month would change everything. Pay my rent, my student loans, buy me time to rebuild. All I had to do was let 30 families get robbed. And if I don't?" Ashton's smile got thinner. "Then you'll be held financially responsible for any delays in remediation, any health issues that result from continued exposure, any legal costs associated with this misunderstanding." I thought about Tina's daughter, her asthma, the fear in that mother's eyes. Except there was no mold, no exposure, no health risk, except the stress of being scammed. "Get out." "Alex, get out of my apartment now." He left the envelope on my coffee table. The guards followed him into the hallway. I heard their footsteps fade toward the elevator. I picked up the envelope. Heavy stock paper. Real money inside, probably. Enough to solve my immediate problems and create a dozen new ones. I tore it in half. Then in half again. By noon, the building was in chaos. Half the residents had paid Green Tomorrow the $800. The other half were demanding refunds after reading my email. Lance Wood had set up a folding table in the lobby, like some kind of disaster relief operation, taking payments and answering questions with the patience of a saint. I watched from the stairwell, He was good, really good. Mrs. Chen from 2A. Are you sure it's safe for my grandson to visit while this is happening? Lance. Absolutely not. Children are most vulnerable to spore exposure. I'd recommend keeping him away until remediation is complete. Mr. Foster from the 3rd floor. My wife has emphysema. Should we get a hotel? Lance. I can't make that decision for you, but if it were my wife... He never said yes, never said no. Just painted pictures and let people fill in the blanks. Clara Fenton sat beside him, nodding at the right moments, adding technical details when someone asked. They had their routine down cold. I was watching from the stairs when my phone rang. Alex, it's Martin. I ducked back into the stairwell for privacy. Tell me you've got good news. Define good. Your air sample data is definitely fabricated. The numbers don't match any natural distribution I've ever seen. It's like someone just picked scary-sounding figures out of a textbook. Can you put that in writing? I can, but Alex, there's something else. I made some calls. Clara Fenton isn't just a disgraced consultant. She's Lance Wood's ex-wife. The stairwell suddenly felt colder. Ex-wife? Divorced 3 years ago. She kept her maiden name for professional reasons, but they were married for 8 years. Built Wood Environmental Solutions together before it went under. Jesus. Gets better. I pulled their business records. They've run this same scam in 4 other cities over the last 2 years. Different company names, same pattern, mixed-use buildings, fake mold, emergency remediation. They cleared about $200,000 in Phoenix alone. I sat down on the stairs. My legs had gone weak. Martin, I need you to... I'm already on it, sending everything to the State Attorney General's office, Fraud Investigation Unit. But Alex... Yeah? Be careful. People like this, when they get cornered, they don't go quietly. I hung up and sat there for a minute, listening to the voices drifting up from the lobby, Lance's patient explanations, residents' worried questions, the normal sounds of people trying to do the right thing based on information they couldn't verify. When I came back downstairs, Lance was packing up his table. Most of the crowd had dispersed. Only a few stragglers remained, writing checks, signing forms. He saw me and smiled that perfect smile. Dr. Hartley, glad you're here. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? Your email last night. Very thorough. A few residents had questions about the footage you shared, so I was able to clarify the inspection process. Explain why preliminary testing looks different from full remediation. My stomach dropped. Several people who were on the fence decided to move forward with payment. Sometimes skepticism actually helps build confidence, you know? Shows we're willing to be transparent. He handed me a business card. If you change your mind about the consultation offer, give me a call. No hard feelings. I watched him walk away, confident, unhurried, like a man who'd just closed a successful business meeting. That's when I realized how badly I'd miscalculated. The security footage looked damning to me because I knew what to look for. But to people without technical background, it looked like thorough documentation. Lance had spun it as transparency. The humidity data made perfect sense if you understood vapor pressure and organic chemistry, but most people don't. They trust experts. And Clara Fenton had the right credentials, even if she'd lost them once before. The bank covenant and insurance implications were financially devastating for Ashton, but residents didn't care about his profit margins. They cared about their kids' health. I'd been fighting with facts while they were winning with fear. My phone buzzed. Text from Tina in 4B. Alex, I read your email. I want to believe you. But what if you're wrong? What if my daughter gets sick because I didn't pay? I can't take that risk. I'm sorry. Another message, Mr. Patel. I've lived through too much to gamble with my family's safety. Paid this morning. Hope you understand. Then another and another. By evening, 26 of 30 units had paid the fee. Green Tomorrow had collected over $20,000. Only 4 holdouts remained, and the pressure was building. Someone had taped a note to my door. Pay your share or move out. Another slipped under the door. Selfish piece of shit. I sat at my kitchen table with what was left of the bourbon and stared at Martin's email. Technical analysis, legal precedents, clear evidence of fraud. None of it mattered. Facts don't trump fear. Truth doesn't beat a good story told by someone people trust. I was losing, not because I was wrong, but because being right isn't enough. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky stayed dark, storm clouds building for round 2. That's when I remembered something my old department head used to say. When you can't change the data, change the experiment. I opened my laptop and started typing a new email, not to residents this time. To the insurance underwriter handling the building's policy. Subject line, request for immediate policy review, possible fraud claim. In the body, I laid out everything. The fabricated air samples, Clara's history, Lance's pattern across multiple cities, Martin's technical analysis. Then I added something else, something I'd been saving. A link to the building's mortgage documents, public record, showing that Mark Ashton had taken out a construction loan 6 months ago for another property, collateralized against this building. If the insurance premium spiked due to environmental issues, he'd default, lose everything, which gave him motive to either prevent the mold claim or blame it on someone else. Someone like a difficult tenant who refused to pay remediation fees. I hit send at 11 p.m. At 11:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. Dr. Hartley, this is Jessica Lowe, senior underwriter at Consolidated Insurance. I just received your email. We need to talk. When? Now. I'm in the parking lot. I looked out my window. Black sedan, engine running, someone inside with a phone to their ear. This is highly irregular, she said. But if what you're alleging is true, we're looking at insurance fraud on a massive scale. I need to see your evidence tonight. I grabbed Martin's files and headed downstairs. Time to change the experiment. Jessica Lowe looked exactly like her voice sounded. Sharp suit, tablet under one arm, the kind of expression that could audit your soul and find it wanting. We sat in her sedan with the dome light on, engine idling, heat blasting against the November cold. She scrolled through Martin's analysis on her tablet, occasionally making notes with a stylus. This is solid, she said after 10 minutes. Fabricated data, clear pattern of fraud across multiple jurisdictions. But I need more than academic analysis. What do you need? She turned the tablet toward me. Our policy specifically covers environmental liability claims. If toxic mold is confirmed, the building's premium goes from $8,000 a year to $35,000. That triggers a default clause in Ashton's construction loan. I know, I saw the mortgage docs. Then you know he's incentivized to either prevent the claim or make it disappear. She tapped the screen. But here's what you don't know. 3 months ago, Ashton tried to refinance, get better terms. We sent an inspector. Building was clean, low risk, we approved it. So if there's suddenly critical mold contamination 3 months later, one of two things happened. Either it grew impossibly fast, which violates physics, or someone lied then, or someone's lying now. I felt something click into place. You think Ashton might be in on it? I think he's either a victim or an accomplice. Either way, we can't pay out a claim until we know which. She closed the tablet. I'm ordering an independent inspection, City Environmental Department, tomorrow morning, non-negotiable. Will that stop green tomorrow? It'll freeze everything. No remediation can begin during an active investigation. If they try, they're admitting they don't want scrutiny. She handed me her card. Stay available. I may need you to testify. I watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the dark. For the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, the lobby looked like a crime scene. 2 inspectors from the City Environmental Department arrived at 8 a.m. with equipment that made Clara's air pump look like a toy. Real hazmat suits, sealed containers, digital monitoring stations that they set up in 4 corners of the mailroom. Lance Wood appeared 15 minutes later, still buttoning his shirt, hair uncombed. First time I'd seen him look anything less than perfect. What's going on? The lead inspector, a woman named Rodriguez, didn't look up from her equipment. Insurance fraud investigation. Buildings on hold pending independent assessment. You can't just... We absolutely can. Any interference with this inspection will be reported to the state attorney general. You want to call your lawyer? Feel free. Otherwise, step back. Lance stepped back. Clara Fenton showed up 20 minutes later. She saw the city inspectors and went pale, actually pale, like someone had drained her blood. She pulled Lance aside. I couldn't hear what they said, but their body language screamed panic, hands gesturing, voices rising. Lance kept shaking his head. Residents started gathering. Tina with her daughter, Mr. Patel, the Martinez family, everyone who'd paid, everyone who'd held out. all of us watching these two city inspectors methodically dismantle the story we'd been sold. Rodriguez pulled samples from the ventilation ducts, scraped corners where Clara had pointed and said, "Critical contamination," used a thermal camera to check for moisture behind the walls. Every reading came back negative. "Humidity stable at 34%, she called to her partner. "No moisture intrusion, no visible growth, no thermal anomalies." She turned to Clara. "Dr. Fenton, can you show me where you found the elevated spore counts?" Clara opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Dr. Fenton?" "The samples we tested near the ventilation intake, bottom left corner." Rodriguez walked to the spot Clara indicated, ran her own test, waited. 0.3 colony-forming units per cubic meter. That's lower than outdoor ambient levels. She looked at Clara. "You reported 3,200. The levels must have dropped." "In 24 hours? A stack of bow trees doesn't work that way. If you had 3,200 CFUs yesterday, we'd still see contamination today. Spores don't vanish." The crowd murmured, quiet at first, then louder. Tina spoke up. "Wait, so there's no mold?" Rodriguez pulled off her respirator. "Not at actionable levels. Whatever you were told, it wasn't accurate." The murmur became a rumble, angry voices. Someone shouted, "I paid $800. Lance tried to smile, that perfect, confident smile. "This is clearly a miscommunication. We'll refund anyone who feels—" "You said my daughter was in danger?" Tina's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You looked me in the eye and told me she could get neurological damage. We were acting on the best available data." "You lied." 2 words, quiet, absolute. The lobby went silent. Clara grabbed Lance's arm, whispered something. He shook his head. She pulled harder, and they both headed for the door. "Dr. Fenton," Rodriguez called, "we're going to need your testing equipment and original samples for verification." "They're at our office. I can—" "No, you'll surrender them now, or I'm calling the police." Clara stopped, turned. Her face was a mask of calculation, weighing options, running scenarios. Then she ran. Just bolted out the door like the building was on fire. Lance stood there for 1 frozen second, then followed. Mr. Patel looked at me. "Alex, what just happened?" I didn't have words, none that made sense. Rodriguez was already on her phone. "This is Inspector Rodriguez, badge 749. I need patrol units at 840 Riverside Drive. 2 suspects fleeing an active fraud investigation." The other inspector started packing equipment, professional, methodical, like this happened every day. Maybe it did. Tina sat down on the lobby couch, her daughter in her lap. "I can't believe I actually paid them." "We all did," Mr. Patel said. "Most of us." Mrs. Chen from 2A started crying, quiet, dignified tears that she wiped away with a tissue from her purse. "My fixed income," she said. $800 is my grocery money for 2 months. The weight of it settled over the lobby like smoke. 26 families, 800 each, $20,000 gone to people who'd looked us in the eyes and lied with technical precision. I felt sick. Rodriguez finished her call and turned to us. "I need statements from everyone who paid, names, amounts, dates. We'll work with the Attorney General to recover your funds, but it's going to take time." "How much time?" someone asked. "Months, maybe a year. These cases get complicated." "A year. For people like Mrs. Chen, that might as well be forever." I climbed the stairs back to my apartment. Each step felt like walking through mud. Inside, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the torn pieces of Mark Ashton's envelope. $5,000 a month. Would have covered Mrs. Chen's losses and then some. My phone buzzed. Text from Martin. "I saw the news. You did it. You stopped them." "Did I?" "I stopped the scam. Exposed the fraud. Protected the building from a $35,000 insurance spike. But 26 families were still out $20,000. Mrs. Chen was still choosing between mold remediation that never happened and groceries. Tina still had to explain to her daughter why Mommy looked so sad. Another text, this one from Jessica Lowe. "Excellent work, Dr. Hartley. Insurance company will likely hire you as consultant for similar cases. Interested?" I set the phone down. The old conference badge was still in my pocket. Laminated plastic, my name half rubbed off. I'd kept it as a reminder of what standing up for truth had cost me. Turned out it cost other people too. There was a knock at my door. soft, tentative. I opened it to find Vadim holding a cardboard box. "From Mailroom," he said. "Your letters. Police say we can open now." He handed me the box and turned to leave. "Vadim, thank you for the security footage. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He looked at me with those sharp engineer's eyes. "In my country, we learn. If you see wrong and say nothing, you are part of wrong, even if speaking up costs everything." He walked away before I could respond. I took the box inside and sorted through 3 days of accumulated mail, bills, junk, catalogs, and one letter from the university. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Dr. Hartley, following a review of your dismissal case, the Faculty Ethics Committee has determined that procedural errors were made in your termination. We would like to discuss the possibility of reinstatement." I read it 3 times. Then I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Normal evening, people coming home from work, living their lives. Somewhere out there, Lance Wood and Clara Fenton were probably in a car, heading to their next city, their next building, their next set of victims. Rodriguez had said she called it in, but I'd watched enough news to know how these things worked. By the time paperwork moved through the system, they'd be gone. Unless someone stopped them differently. I picked up my phone and opened a new browser tab, searched Investigative Journalists Environmental Fraud. Found a name, Rebecca Torres, based in Phoenix, had written extensively about corporate scams targeting residential buildings. I drafted an email, attached everything, Martin's analysis, the security footage, court records, the pattern across 4 cities. Subject line, "They'll do it again unless someone tells their story." My finger hovered over send. This wasn't about me anymore. Wasn't about being right or getting my job back or proving I'd been wronged. This was about Mrs. Chin's grocery money, Tina's daughter, 26 families who'd trusted the wrong people because the wrong people sounded right. I hit send. Then I called the number on the university letter. Time to see if truth was worth anything after all. The university meeting happened 3 days later in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and new carpet. Dean Patterson sat across from me, flanked by 2 lawyers and a woman from HR whose name I immediately forgot. They had folders, many folders. The kind that suggested this had been brewing longer than 3 days. "Dr. Hartley, we've reviewed the circumstances of your termination," Patterson began. "The developer you refused to work with, Meridian Construction, was later investigated for environmental violations. Your concerns were validated." I waited. There was always a but in these conversations. "But your reinstatement isn't automatic. There are conditions." "Of course there are." "You'd return as adjunct faculty, reduced course load, no tenure track, and you'd need to complete ethics training." I almost laughed. Ethics training for refusing to fake data. The HR woman shifted uncomfortably. "It's standard protocol for all reinstated faculty." "How much does it pay?" $42,000 annually, plus benefits. $42,000 before taxes, after losing 2 years of income, burning through savings, teaching online courses for scraps. It was insulting. It was also more than I had now. "I need time to think about it." Patterson nodded like he'd expected that. "You have until Monday." I left feeling hollower than when I'd arrived. Outside, November wind cut through my jacket. The campus looked the same. Old brick buildings, students hurrying between classes, the quad where I used to eat lunch and pretend I belonged to something larger than myself. That life felt like it happened to someone else. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Email from Rebecca Torres, the journalist. "Dr. Hartley, your information is explosive. I've verified the Phoenix case and found 2 more cities you didn't know about. 7 total. Wood and Fenton have been running this scam for 3 years. I'm breaking the story tomorrow. Can you go on record?" I sat in my car and read it twice. Going on record meant my name attached to everything. Press coverage, possible retaliation. Definitely burning any bridges with consulting work from insurance companies or developers. It meant choosing sides when I'd spent 2 years trying to stay neutral. I typed back, "Yes, use my name. Tell the whole story." Hit send before I could reconsider. That evening, I helped organize a meeting in the building's community room. All 30 units invited. 28 showed up. Mrs. Chen brought cookies she'd baked. Tina brought her daughter. Even Mr. Patel, who'd stopped making eye contact after paying green tomorrow, came and sat in the back row. Mark Ashton showed up too, uninvited, looking like he'd aged 5 years in a week. "I owe you all an apology," he started. "I didn't know Wood and Fenton were running a scam. I thought—" "You thought you'd make money either way," someone interrupted, "whether the mold was real or fake." Ashton's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "My grocery money isn't fair," Mrs. Chen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood, smoothing her dress. $800 gone because we trusted professionals, because we were scared. The room went silent. "I don't want apologies," she continued. "I want my money back. All of us do." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I stood. "The Attorney General's investigation will take months, maybe over a year, but there's something else we can do." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the TV on the wall, brought up a web page. "This is a class action lawsuit template. Environmental fraud. I talked to a lawyer yesterday. If we organize as a group, we have standing. The building can sue Green Tomorrow Initiative, Lance Wood, Clara Fenton, and any connected entities." "That costs money," Mr. Patel said. "Some lawyers work on contingency. They take a percentage if we win, nothing if we lose." Tina spoke up. "How long would that take?" "Honestly, could be 2 years, could be longer, but it's something. It's action." Ashton cleared his throat. "I'll contribute. Not legally liable, but morally, I should have done more due diligence. I'll put in $5,000 toward legal fees." The room stayed quiet, weighing his offer against their anger. Finally, Vadim raised his hand. "I join lawsuit, and I have more footage. Other people who come to building, ask questions, before Green Tomorrow." "What kind of people?" "People who measure, take pictures, never identify themselves." He pulled out another USB drive. "I keep copies of everything." Of course he did. By the end of the meeting, 23 families had agreed to join the lawsuit. Mrs. Chen volunteered to be the lead plaintiff. Tina offered to help organize documents. We weren't just victims anymore. We were a group with a plan. Walking back to my apartment afterward, I found Tina waiting in the hallway. "Alex, I owe you an apology. I said some things, believed some things." "You were protecting your daughter. I get it." "Still, you were right, and I made you feel like the bad guy for being right." She shifted her kid to her other hip. "That's not okay." I didn't know what to say to that. Forgiveness felt too big. Resentment felt too small. "We're good," I said finally. "Just, next time someone tells you your kid's in danger, ask for a second opinion." She smiled, tired, real. Deal. 2 weeks later, Rebecca Torres's article went live. "Environmental fraud ring targets residential buildings across 7 cities. How 2 professionals built a business on fake mold scares." The story included everything: names, faces, patterns, victims. My name appeared 14 times, most often as whistleblower Dr. Alex Hartley, who risked personal and professional consequences to expose the scheme. Within hours, it was everywhere. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. By evening, I had 17 interview requests and 300 new emails. Lance Wood and Clara Fenton were arrested in Dallas, trying to set up shop at another mixed-use building. Bonds set at $200,000 each. The Attorney General's office announced criminal charges: wire fraud, insurance fraud, conspiracy. Enough years to make running not worth it. Jessica Lowe sent me a bottle of expensive bourbon with a note. "Some things are worth fighting for." I didn't open it. Just put it on the shelf next to the cheap bottle I'd already finished. The university called 3 days after the article. Dean Patterson, sounding different this time. "Dr. Hartley, we'd like to revise our offer. Full reinstatement, associate professor level, tenure track restored, $68,000 salary to start." What changed? Honestly, the press coverage. The board feels that having a faculty member recognized for ethical courage reflects well on the institution. There it was, not about ethics, about optics. And if the press coverage had gone differently? Silence on the line. "I don't deal in hypotheticals, Alex." "Right." I looked at the old conference badge sitting on my desk, name half rubbed off. "I need to think about it." "The offer won't stay open forever." "I know." I hung up and sat there for a long time, watching dust move through afternoon sunlight. That night, I got an email from a policy think tank in D.C. They wanted to hire me to consult on environmental fraud prevention, $75,000 a year, remote work. Real influence on actual regulations. My phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen. Our lawyer says lawsuit looks strong. Thank you for organizing us. You gave us our power back. Another text. Vadim. You did good thing, hard thing. Your partner from old job, she would be proud. I had to read that twice before I understood. My old research partner, the one whose name I'd barely spoken in 2 years because it hurt too much. The one who'd told me never bend right before the university fired me. Yeah, maybe she would be proud. Or maybe she'd tell me I was an idiot for taking so long to stand up. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Same view, different person looking. The think tank job would mean leaving this building, this city, starting over somewhere new. The university job would mean staying, proving I could rebuild in the place that broke me. Both were victories. Both were compromises. I thought about Tina's daughter, who'd never actually been in danger, about Mrs. Chen's grocery money, about Vadim's quiet courage in saving footage when he didn't have to, about how truth doesn't win automatically, how being right means nothing if you can't make people listen. I opened my laptop and replied to the think tank. I'm interested. When can we talk details? Then I sent another email to Dean Patterson. Thank you for the revised offer. I'm declining. I hope the next person you fire for ethics has a shorter wait for vindication. Hit send. Close the laptop. The old conference badge went into my desk drawer. Didn't need to carry it anymore. The scar tissue was enough. Outside, the city lights flickered on as evening settled. Somewhere out there, someone else was probably getting a letter about toxic mold or foundation damage or some other emergency that existed only on paper. Maybe they'd have a Vadim, maybe they'd ask questions. Maybe they wouldn't. But if they did, maybe they'd Google environmental fraud, find Rebecca's article, see my name, know they weren't alone. I poured 2 fingers of Jessica's bourbon into a glass. Good stuff, smooth enough to drink slow. Raised it to the window, to the city, to all the people fighting small battles nobody would write articles about. Some things don't mold, I said to no one. Then I drank and started packing for DC. 3 months later, Mrs. Chen sent me a photo. The entire building gathered in the lobby holding a check from Green Tomorrow's seized accounts. $800 each, plus interest, plus punitive damages. Her message, we won, all of us. I framed it and hung it on my new office wall. Right next to the conference badge I couldn't quite let go of after all. Because some scars are worth keeping. They remind you what you're made of when everything else gets stripped away. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they remind you that being right is only half the battle. The other half is making sure you're not the only one left standing when it's over.